Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is David. Today I'm going to show you how to build this amazing game dashboard website using React.js. So in this video, you are going to learn how to build this dynamic carousel with all the carousel card in it. If you swipe it, it's entirely swipeable, and also you can go ahead with the next button and you can go back with the previous button. And also if you click on one of those trailer video toggle button inside the card, you will see magically those trailer video comes out. This one comes out as well, and you can also toggle it off, toggle this one on, toggle it off. It's entirely within that individual item without affecting other cards in the carousels. And also down the bottom, you can see there are heaps of game card has been demonstrated to the user. And also it has a fully functioned like button, fully functioned add to shopping back button, and also with all the discount, original price, and also the price after discount showing off down the bottom as well. If you look at the top left corner, you will see there's a menu toggle button there. If you click it, magically you will see the width of the left-hand menu shrinks down, and if you toggle it again, that one shows up in full. So I will show you in this video how to make that animated side menu in React.js as well. So at the top right corner, you will see there are two icons. One is for the how many items has been liked by you, the other one is how many items has been added to your shopping bag. So if you click the like button on the game card for anyone, you will see the color changes to the same color of green, and also the numbers of items has been added into your liked library, and that number go up to 1. If you like another one, that one will increase to 2. And let's jump into my library to see if those things has actually been added into your library. We get in there, we can see, wonderful, those two items we just click on has been successfully added into our library. If we toggle the like button again, that one goes off, and that one goes off, your library becomes empty. Go to the home page again. If we click down the bottom, the add to shopping back button, and magically we'll see the shop back number increase to 1 as well, and another one. So those 3 items we have clicked has been successfully added into our shopping bag. If we jump into our bag section, you will see those 3 items there. In this video, I will also show you how to create a dynamic shopping cart or shopping bag using React.js. These are fully dynamic as well. As you can see, the price, discounts, and payment has been successfully fetched. The total numbers of items in your shopping bag is automatically counted, and also the total price of your shopping cart has been automatically calculated as well. This is the after discount price. If you click on any one of those, that one goes away, the price changes, the item number changes. Click on this one, delete, that one goes away, and also the relevant data changes accordingly, and now you empty your shopping bag. So this is how we're going to have the shopping cart. If we go back to the second menu, the catalog, the categories, we will see all the catalog of our games being presented to the user. In this video, I just using some sample games, which are in total numbers of 8. In the real work, we can have more game cards demonstrated on this page. And also what I want to demonstrate here is that you will have to learn this fully functioned filter bar inside React.js. This is really useful for any kind of React project. I will show you how to build this. And also on the top right corner, when you key in the search, let's just try, we want to search the Dota 2 game. We're just trying to key in the D, and also the game name that contains D will be filtered out. If we key in the second letter O, only the Dota will show off to the user because that's the only one that contains DO as the first and second letter. We put in Dota, we have that name ready to be filtered the game that we want. This is a very accurate search bar, anyone that works. Let's just try another one. We try LEA, League of Legends, so that one gets left out. The remaining things all hidden up. So I will show you how to create this functional search bar in React.js as well. And also, if you look at entire design theme, I use the neumorphism design style to create this dashboard. Things get popped up. It's like a cubic card with this amazing show off effect. And also the page animation is really cool and amazing. Jump up and jump off, jump up and jump down. So it looks really cool for the user. So when you shrink the side menu bar, the entire items in the side menu bar dynamically change it to the smaller style as well. So not only this website works on the full page, it also works on the mobile view as well. So when we turn on the mobile view, as you can see, all the items have been rearranged responsively to the mobile size, and also the front carousel works as well with only one image showing, and also the trailer video button works perfectly as well on the mobile view. And magically what you can see, the side menu got hidden. If we click it again, it pops back in a very smooth and gentle way, but it stands out from the page. And also we click again, you can see this very smooth pop in and pop back effect. Very, very cool. And also on the mobile view, all the pages works perfectly. If we click on the second button, we go to the category page, and all of this button working perfectly. And same for if you want to add some item to your like, add some item to your bag, those are working all fine. You can check the library, that one goes away, the library is inside. If it goes to your bag, because you know there's one item in your bag, it's just a double check, and you will see the fully responsive table inside the back page as well. That one is 100% scrollable to the end, and you can remove it very smoothly. Alright, if you are very excited about this project and want to go ahead and code along with me, please subscribe my channel, and now let's just go ahead and build it right now. So to start this project, you just need to find a directory in your computer, and then open up the terminal and key in npx create React app, and then just type in your app name. So for demonstration purpose, I'm just gonna key in game store or game shop or website. So any name you like, you just put it in. Remember which folder that you put it in is showing right here. And then once you click on enter, this one is going to create that project for you in that directory, but it's going to take a while, so I'm going to pause my video. Once this one being finalized, I'll go back to it. Alright, the project has been successfully built. And now we're just going to follow along the code and move to that folder. So cd means change directory. We're changing to the project directory we have just created. That's going to be game shop website. So we cd into that. So once you get in, this directory name will change. That means that you have changed directory successfully. And then we want to open up this project in our code editor. I'm using Visual Studio Code. So just go to the keyboard shortcuts code period. And then that will open up your project in this directory. So just expand the size of it. So once we get in, we can see all the folders for this project has been built for you. You don't have to build individual one of them on your own. So nothing to worry about in the Node module. That's all the dependencies and libraries being used in this project. So what you need to concern about is the package.json file, which tells you which dependency has been used in this project. And also you need to worry about is the source folder, which contains all of the source code. You will write pretty much all your code in this app.js file, or wrapped in this app.js file. And then another thing you probably want to have a look is the public folder, where in the index.html files that shows all root page of your website. Eventually, the thing that you build under app.js will be embedded into this index file under div id equals to root. Everything will be show up here. So let's now just quickly start off this project, control backtick to open up the terminal inside code editor, and then we go to npm start to make it show on your browser. Sometimes it just wouldn't automatically pops out, so I just manually key in that URL. Yeah, it shows successfully. This is localhost 3000, and you can see our project is running okay. And this one has say Webpack compiled successfully, so nothing wrong with it. We're okay to go ahead. And the next step, we're going to do a bit of a coding environment setting up. Just close off this terminal for now. So in the index page, there's a lot of given information that is not quite useful for our project. So I'm just going to simply delete those. And this green one as well. This comes with the built-in package. And of course, we know that we need JavaScript to run this app. And here you can change your application title. Let's just say you change it to game shop website. So that's going to be a React app. I have no problem with that. So once it's done, this looks all clean and nice and not confusing anymore. So close off the public folder and go back to the app.js. So currently it's running as a React built-in background thing. So what we can do, we can delete all of those given stuff. None of these are related to our application. So we just delete those. So we can just type in h1 that says hello. And we go back to the browser. It says, you can see it changes to hello. That basically means that the React is working so far. And if we go back to the app.css file, you can see all of those things are provided to run those React background on the browser, but it's not related to our app, so I'm just going to delete those. And later on, we're going to put in our own CSS code for the initialization. But before we do so, our next thing is to install the dependencies for this application. So open up the terminal again, control backtick, and We're not gonna install on this terminal. Instead, we're gonna add a new terminal in. So this one is a fresh new one, and we're gonna install quite a few things here. npm. That's for the Node package manager. Install, I for install. First thing, we're gonna install Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a very useful framework, front-end framework to help you set up those responsive design. Otherwise, you have to type heaps of code in your CSS to achieve that responsive purpose. And also, we're gonna install for the if we install Bootstrap, it's very handy to just install the Bootstrap icon as well. So we're gonna use that icon. And also, we're gonna install that swiper. Remember in the carousel that we have a swiper thing on the home page, so we're gonna install that. And that's pretty much so far all we're gonna install. We just hit enter, and you're gonna install all of those 3 packages for us. Just wait for the while, it's quite quick. So as long as you successfully install all of those, and if you go back to the package.json file, you will see that Bootstrap and Bootstrap icon are there, swiper is there. So if they're not showing off, that basically means that you installed them unsuccessfully. However, if the name gets popped up here, more than likely you have done it right. So we close off the package.json file and also the index file. The next step is to start building this application straight away, and we're going to delete the unuseful import, which is the logo. We're still going to use the app.css, but I'm going to initialize the app.css in our project. First, we're going to define the font we're going to use. So I'm going to import 2 Google fonts. One is a Google font, the other one is from the website called Online Web Font. You can go to this website and search for this font to find the font we use in our game card. The one above is just the Google fonts, Roboto. So that's the 2 fonts we're going to use. And then we're just going to define some generic setting for the entire application. We're going to make the margin 0, padding 0, and the box sizing border box. So once we have that, go back to the browser, you will see this one touch very tightly to the corner. Previously, there's a default margin and padding, but now it's gone. So that's what it is for. And the next thing, we're going to set up some root color so we can easily handle all the color changes in our project, which are these. We have a primary color, we have a secondary color. Secondary color is sort of like this cyan color, which is my favorite. And then we have our BG color, the background color as well, which is a sort of a color between dark blue and black. And also we're gonna have a generic setting for our H tag. And I'm just gonna close off this one for now and leave the browser one on because that will support our browser running. And we're gonna set H1, H2, H4, and P all to color white. And the last bit is just gonna be the generic setting for the body. So we will have our body in the background color of our BG color. If you define it in the root here, and then you can use it straight away over here. And we're gonna set the body to use the default font of Roboto instead of the given one. And it's gonna take the whole width and the minimum height of 100 screen height, overflow hidden. And we go back to our browser, you can see the background color changes to the one we want. So that's pretty much the generic setting for the entire application. And with that, we can build the rest of the application. So just close that off and move back to app. So in the app, before we actually type in the code, we're going to import the dependencies that we just installed. One is the Bootstrap, the other one is the Bootstrap icon. So normally, at a good developing habits, the third-party vendor dependency, you will put it right above. And after that, you put your own dependencies or imports, which is your local ones. These are the global ones. So we import Bootstrap, we import the Bootstrap icon with those 2 lines of code. And for the app one to running, we're going to import the React as well. So import React from React. We're not going to use it so far, but later on we'll use it. And inside the app, what we're going to do here, we're going to think about to present things on a web browser, we need a wrapper to wrap them around. So my habit is to create a wrapper before, instead of directly putting all of our components or pages into the app. So what I will do is in the source folder, I'm going to create a couple of subfolders to hold our component and pages. First, I will create a component folder, component, and then I will create a new folder called page folder, pages. And if you have some static data that you want to use in this app, you can create a data folder. And also, if you have some static image that you want to use, an image folder. So typically those are the 4 folders to support your app running. And once we have that done, in the page folder, I'm going to create a new page, which is our home page and the one that loads the entire application. And I want to call it the main, but that's not a folder, that's a file. I call it the main.javascript or JavaScript X, which is the file name extension for React app. Hit enter. So once you get in that, you just type in RFCE, which is the keyboard shortcut, to create a boilerplate, which looks very similar to the app one. And if you don't have this shortcut working, you just go to your extension and searching for React. Well, I'm just gonna scroll down. Yeah, this one, React 7 Redux React Native snippet. You're gonna install that one in your extension, and you will have the RFCE thing working for you. Go back to our file, the main one. So when we export our main over here, and that name the main for now is fine, so we save it, and then we import that main on our app page. So we're going to import main. It's asking you, are you going to import main from the page? Yes, that's what we're looking for. And here, instead of writing that hello straight away here, what we're going to do, we're going to import the main, angle brackets main. So that's going to be the one. Just going to close it off. So as soon as we import that, so this part is coming from the main component or the main page that we exported here, and we import it here and show it in the app. And when we go back to the browser, you can see that main words is showing at the corner, right? So we have done a successful import of the main component. And also, I'm going to build a good habit is that you need to think about your HTML and your CSS all together. As soon as you have your HTML components and you want to build a file of the same name, in this case just main.css. So you will have your CSS file ready, and then once you have that CSS file, you're just going to import it, single quotation, same folder, that period slash means same folder, and main.css. So you import in the same folder the CSS file you just created into this JavaScript file. And then any CSS you write over here will be applied into this page only, right? So that's what we're going to do. And in the main page, there are some generic setting I'm going to set for the main as well, which is the main part. I'm just going to copy and paste over here and explain it for you. So pretty much we're going to make the main a position absolute. Top, left, right, bottom, all to 0 basically means it's going to take the entire screen, the full width and full height. Give the padding of 30 pixels and also a border of 8 pixels with our background color. And also a box shadow, so it looks standing out, because remember, the designing style in this project is a neumorphism, so we're applying some cubicle effects. To show that a cubicle effects, we have to do a box shadow to make things stand out like a cube. And then we're just going to make alignment adjustment auto center and space between, overflow hidden. Save that, and we go back to the browser. Haven't changed yet. Let's see. Because in the main we haven't created anything. Here we're just going to change this one to main, and then give it a title, the main. If you wrap the things in the main tag, because the CSS is targeting the main tag, so we have to name the same thing. And then we go back to the browser, you will see there's a slight change, and that cubicle effect is actually on. And we're probably going to set the background image, the background color to that as well. So we're just going to say background over here, BAR, background color. And then we go back again, so that thing looks like exactly what we're looking for. It's very, very weak, but if you look at it in detail, you will see that down the bottom and around the corner edge, there's a slight blurring. The box shadow effect is showing there. It's like a very shadow box, and give that sort of a cubic effect. It'll be more obvious when we put in all the rest of the components, but so far it looks like a box with a very shadow depth. So we're going back. That's what we're going to target for the main, and that looks all fine for me now. So inside the main, what we're going to build is a couple of things. We're going to have a side menu over here, and then we're going to have our main banner beside it, and on the top we're going to have a header. So, and then right below it is going to be the image carousel. That's probably going to take this one. And then down the bottom, we have a title and section for the home page, and then that's the place to show off our cards, the game cards. So ideally, we can present 4 over here. So see, that's how I can easily build a framework on the browser. Bear this in mind, this is what we're going to build. So first thing first, we're going to create the banner section and also the set menu section to hold everything. Go back to the editor. So inside the main, the first thing, we're going to delete that. We want to build the side menu. So side menu is supposed to be a component instead of a separate page. So we're going to create it in the component folder, a new file called side menu.jsx. So that's going to be the React file. Hit enter, rfce, create that boilerplate. And right after it, we're going to create a side menu CSS. Side menu.css. Enter. So these two are supposed to be linked to each other. Just close off that main.css so far. So we import the CSS we just created. Single quotation, period slash means the same folder, side menu.css. So we just import that. That looks all good. And then if you think about inside the set menu, we're going to create all the menus, the navigations, and all of those buttons inside it. But firstly, since it has been exported, we're going to import the side menu in the main, as we just created. The side menu here, normally the code editor is going to check with you, are you going to import the one from the component folder? If you have this option, that's going to be easier because you just need to key in the tab, and then that thing gets imported straight away for you. And then just need to close the angle brackets for the tag. Save it. Double check it's been imported from the correct directory. Because in the side menu, we have key in the side menu here. And then if we go back to the browser, let's see. That's not a match. Probably going to be a typo. Let's see what's the typo that we make. Oh, sorry. This is a lowercase. Very important, not uppercase. And if we go back, the thing we created is right over here. And it's not very clear because we haven't changed the color. If we change it to H1, and then we put inside menu, save it. And it is over here on the browser, the side menu in H1. So that one has been successfully imported. So wrap up, inside app, we imported the main. Inside the main, we imported the side menu. So that's like the hierarchy of your application. And keep doing that. We're going to first build the side menu inside a div. So we're just going to say, use this div, give the class name, and we call it a set menu. And inside here, first thing to show off on the side menu is our logo. So we're just going to create a logo part. And inside the logo, we're just going to say it's like a game shop. So just give a random name play. And you can put a icon for it to make it look nicer. To do so, firstly, we're going to wrap this thing in a span and call it a brand. Because later on, we're going to have to do some styling to it. So that's why I give it a class name. And above it, we want to put in the icon. Remember, in this case, we used the Bootstrap icon that we have all installed at the beginning. So I'm just going to jump to the Bootstrap icon page. Here we go. There's the Bootstrap icon. You just type in Google Bootstrap icon. The first link pops up will be this page. And here you just type in the one that I chose, controller, which is like the game controller. You could use any one you favor or your own images. That's 100% fine. So I'm just going to put in this one, controller. So we have the logo part done, which contains 2 parts. And then the second part, what we're going to do is the navigation. We have our home page, we have our categories, we have our library page, and we have also got the shopping back page. So we're going to create a nav, which is a list. And inside here, we're going to put all the items here. So say, for example, we'll have a list and underscore A. That one. The first thing is going to be our home. And then underneath that, we probably want to give an icon for the home as well. Just going back to the Bootstrap, going back to icon. If you type in home, it'll find you the home, and you just choose the one that you feel is okay for you. I believe this one looks nicer, so I'll just go with that. And we'll just put that one before home. And then we'll have one list. And think about, you're going to have to repeat this 4 or 5 times if you do it in the vanilla JavaScript and HTMLs. However, in React, we do not repeat ourselves. So whenever you have a component that's going to be reused or repeat, you have to separate them into a component. So we're going to wrap this thing into a name list item component. And later on, we can, whenever we want to use it, we just call that component instead of rewrite this code. Okay? And here in the component, we create one called nav list item JSX, enter RFCE. So we have that component here. We're going to replace the return part to the code we just write over here. So we're going to cut and then going to the name list item component and paste it here. It's a very tricky thing, so very important things to look at is the class name. The React class name will be the same as the class in our standard HTML file, but they just use the React the class name for class. So the thing you imported from the outside only write everything in class. So you have to replace that in class name, otherwise it will show you an error later on at a compile time. And same thing for this one as well, just going to be class name. Okay, so we have our icon, we have our name. Later on, we will make this thing very dynamic, because the name and the icon can also be injected as a property over here. So we can make these two things dynamic. We don't have to hard code every time that we choose something. And the next thing is to generate the entire nav list. How are we going to do that? Firstly, think about if you hard code everything, that's going to be no different from using vanilla JavaScript. The ideal way is to have the nav list data stored somewhere, and we use that nav list data to map the entire nav list. So what we're going to do was, inside the data folder, we're going to create a file called nav list data.js. This is just purely JavaScript file, which contains a JavaScript array of the JavaScript objects, and we're going to export that data and import it inside the menu over here. So hit enter. Going into that file, I already prepared this data for you, so I'm just going to copy and paste in. Looks like this. And I will explain it. It's a JavaScript array. The name is nav list data. We create it here and we export default over here, so other files can import it. And the data structure works in objects. This array contains 4 objects. In each object, it has 5 properties. So the ID, the target means where this navigation is going to target at, which is our home page. The name of it is the one that's showing on the browser. The icon it's going to be using also can be defined here. If you define your icon here, that'll make your navigation very dynamic. You can change the icon as well. Active or not active, this is when you click on the icon or click on the navigation button, you turn on the active status, and supposedly the starting for the active one should be different from those non-active one. So this is the properties for it. As soon as we have that, we're just going back to our side menu, and we're going to import that data above. So here we say import nav list data, and I already have a reminder for you. You checked it, and that's the one we're looking for, which is tab. And also we're going to import our nav list item, because we're going to map into that component. I'm going to import it over here. Nav list item. So yep, that's the correct one. So we import that. So we have our data, we have our item. So the following step will just be map our data into this item, so we can have the entire nav list component. Right. And to do so, we're going to use some React hooks called useStateHook. And inside the side menu, we're just going to say const. The useStateHook works in a way to control the states of all the components on your browser, on your DOM page. If it's going to appear or disappear, if it's going to be changing or not changing, what status of it that component is supposed to be. That's what it is for. So we can give a name called nav data, And then it comes in a way, first part in this array is the name of the state. The second part, it comes in as a natural function. We can call it set name data. This function will change the state of the state data, and then equals to use state hook. Inside the brackets, you're going to have to inject the initial state of that state component. Say, for example, the initial state, we want it to be the name list data. We just put in name list data over here. So the computer would know as soon as this component gets mounted on the browser, this data will be injected into the state. And the state variable nav data will be the nav list data, right? That's how we pass in the data into our state data, so we can handle it. Some people might ask, why don't we just use the data straight away? Why you have to build a state to hold it? Because this thing is static, you can't change it. If you map this thing or you inject this thing into a state variable, you can change it using the set name data, right? But later on, we want to do manipulations and changings to make our navigation dynamic, so we can't use the static data. And then the next step is gonna be mapping. So we're gonna map the name data using the JavaScript higher order array function map. And inside here, we're gonna map every single item inside the nav data into the nav list item. So we're just gonna cut that and put it over here. Sometimes if you only have one thing to return, you can just write it straight away, but normally we wrap it with the brackets, just in case you have multiple lines. If the one line is okay, with or without the purple brackets, it's working all fine. But just a good habit, in case you have multiple line over here, put it in the brackets. And here what we want to do is to think about the navigation data contains 4 items. If you go back to our browser now, you will see that all of those things have been mapped on our screen so far, but you have 4 home icons. Instead of the dynamic one, we have the same one. Why is that? Because inside the nav list item, we put the static data there. This is not dynamic. What we're supposed to do is to inject all of this data into our child component. And the way to do so is to use property. So you can set properties for your customized component over here. First, the property is the key. Whenever you want to use map inside React, you have to set a key for each mapped component. So the key is why I defined the underscore ID for. Inside our data, I defined underscore ID to make it unique. This must be unique, cannot be reused. This is for the ID, for the key. And the second thing, we can tell which item we want to pass into this nav list item, which is the item itself. This item itself refers to each individual item inside the nav data array, which is each object. That's the first item, the second item, the third item, and the last item. That's what is item for each item. And then as soon as we have that, if we go back to the nav, we have one property called item. Going back to the child component, we can deconstruct that property item. This is called property destructuring. And we use this object destructuring method to obtain that property. And then we can use the data or all the features of that property. First thing, we're going to change the name. Here, instead of hard coding home, we want to say item dot, what was the property of that? Item dot name. So this has to be the same as the data you set. So go back and key in name, save it, go back to the browser. As you can see, the name has all become dynamic, right? It's the same as our data set. But the issue is that the icon is the same. They're all using the home icon, which is incorrect. How do we make this thing dynamic as well? It's very easy. We're using the temporary literal to conditionally define our class name. Yeah, so far our class name has been wrapped into the double quotation, but you can make it dynamic. We're just going to cut the static part of the name, which is the bi. This is the static part unchanged. The later part is dynamic, and we make that dynamic defined here, right? So each one is different. And we're just going to delete this part and give it curly braces, tells the React that we're going to do some JavaScript here using backtick. This is called temporary literal, which allows you to put text, words, string, and also your JavaScript code all together. And here we're going to put in the bi, which is the static part, and then compile the non-static part, which is the using the $, double curly braces to wrap it around. Inside here, you can write the code item.icon. So here in the data, we have the item.icon comes over here, and we just access it over here. Okay, so if we go back to the browser, and you can see all of the icons before it has now been changed to the one in our data array accordingly. Very, very beautiful, very, very cool, right? So we have done so far the part for the navigation. Some tiny adjustment is just I'm going to wrap this item name inside a span, because later on we're going to do something with it. Give the name called nav name, and then put it in. So now you have your nav name, and the icon, just leave it like the icon. I'm pretty cool with that. Yep, this one has been done. Close it off. Go back to our side menu. This one's good. So it looks pretty ugly so far because we haven't done the CSS yet. So I'm just going to copy and paste in some CSS and explain them for you. So in the CSS page, the first part that I want to put in is the side menu general setting. It's not going to take the whole screen. It's only going to take 20% of the width, because remember on the right hand side is going to be our banner section. It's going to take the whole height. And I'll give the padding of 30 pixels, give the border of nearly a transparent color but slightly black. Border radius 30 pixels, background is our predefined background. And also the box shadow give you the neumorphism effect and give the display of flag. So going back to there, and you can see it's like a cubic standing out of the page with that shadow thing. So on the top and left, give a bit of a light and white box shadow. On the right and down the bottom, give a dark shadow. That's like a lighting coming up from the left top corner. That'll give this kind of a cubicle effect, which is really cool. And going back to the editor, we're going to set a definition, the styling for logo. For logo, we're going to use our cool family font, which I found is really, really beautiful when you design some like some play or game website using this sort of a font. It looks really nice. And give a color of white, adjust the font size and font weight. So save that. And going back, you can see our logo looks like that, which is really nice. The padding is okay. The margin is okay. So that's where our logo is, right above. And the second part is going to be our navigation. So for the nav, I'm going to put in this one. Give the margin, make sure it's a display flex direction column, because so far the flex direction is row. We wanted to flex by column. Column means vertically, okay? And give a list style of none, and also gap 15 pixels. And if you go back, that thing has been aligned vertically, and also with a perfect gap between. This gap thing is really good. In the old days, sometimes we write margin to bottom or margin to top to make those things space out. But now with the gap inside the flex function, it makes it a lot easier. And then following that, we're going to decide the item inside the nav, which is the nav list, and also nav list A. We set the color to white, give a proper font size, and also we make sure it aligns properly. And then go back to C. It looks all nice and decent, right? And after that, we're just gonna give the dynamic setting. What if somebody hover on your navigation or click on one of the buttons in your navigation? You want that part of the navigation to be different from the rest, right? So we're gonna have to set the active part and the non-active part, which is in our data list. We have that feature as well. We have our active navigation item, and then we have the non-active navigation item. And here as well, in the CSS, we have to set up the styling accordingly. For the hovered or the active one, we wanted to have a box shadow to stand out like a cube. So if we go back to the browser, if I hover on it, you will see the difference. It's like a standing out, pops up from the flat screen. Give a bit of a 3D effect as well. This is all about the neumorphism styling, which I found is really cool. And then over here, we're pretty much done the nav list, hover and active. Later on, we're going to do the React code to set up the active navigation, but so far I'm fine with it now. Underneath the navigation, what we want to have is our social, because we haven't finished the side menu yet. The social part is going to be very, very similar. to the navigation, you will have your social icon and you will have your styling. So instead of constructing it from the scratch, because you got the idea from the navigation, what I will do, just leave you like a practice for you to do on your own. I'm going to paste in the social part of the code, give a class name social, and I hard-coded all of this list item. But supposedly, this is not the correct way to do. I do it because I wanted to practice. I wanted to generate another data called social list data, and then you can map the data inside the social list data into this social list item. And it's just going to be some meta Twitter X and also the YouTube and also a share. And once you've done that, you can do the styling. So this is like the typical way that we do in our standard HTML. But in React, we normally just create one component called like this, one list component, and then we map it. I haven't done the mapping, so I leave it to you to do the mapping on your own, like a practice. But I give you the the CSS code for the social. The social, we're going to make the position absolute down the bottom. Just depart from the bottom by 50 pixels, just very close to the bottom. And also for the list in the social, we're going to give a declaration of non-color white, adjust the font and transition. And also for list hover, we want to have a color change. So if you go back to the browser now, it has been perfectly listed. If you hover on it, it will show up our the cyan color. And then the last one, we want it to be different from the rest because it's a share button. We want people to share the page. So we just give the one, remember over here, I give the last one a special class name called a share. That's why we can define it over here. The share on hover is going to be slightly different from the rest because we want it to stand out. The color is going to be that. And also we're going to give a different background for you to stand out. Give the background and circle. It looks like that. Okay? Really, really nice with a social area. But you have one practice you can do on your own, which is refactoring this part into a separate social icon component. And then we have pretty much finalized the side menu, except that we haven't turned on the active and the non-active status because remember, the size of the side menu should expand or shrink down depending on how you want to toggle it. But we'll finish that, come back to that active part when we build the banner section. And now, just going back to our main, down the side menu, I'm going to put in the banner part, which is give the div dot class name banner. And that's it. So inside the banner, we are going to wrap our header. We are going to wrap the content of the home page and all different pages. So this structure is different from our typical one single page website where you have all the things by on top of each other or down the bottom. This one is like a dashboard, so it's going to be different. And very soon in the main, we're going to define our banner CSS as well. So what we do for the banner, we're going to give a position of relative with a width of 80%. Remember in our side menu, that width is 20%, and the width for the banner part should be 80%. So 80% plus 20% is 100%, which will take the whole screen width. Okay? And then we give the height of the same height, 100%. Border radius is the same, background color is the same. Pretty much everything else is the same as the side menu except the width. And going back to the browser, I haven't saved the main part yet, so save it. And you can see the banner shows straight away. This is like a two little square or rectangle standing out from the screen, a little bit of a pop-up effect. This is what we call the pneumorphism. Very cool. It gives you sort of this 3D cubicle feeling, but it's not so strong. And we're gonna have our header on top of it. So inside the banner, we're gonna write our header. But think about it. Are you gonna write your header over here straight away, or are you gonna create a separate component and import a header component here? This is the React way of thinking. In the typical web development approach, we just write every code, all the code on our page without thinking about are they going to be alone, are they going to be a separate component? But in React, we have to think about reusability, we have to think about isolation, that kind of things. So obviously the header is going to be a separate part. So what I will do, I will create a component called header and then import it back over here in our folder. So you can either put a header inside a page or inside a component. I would say it's ideally, in most of the scenarios, it can be a component, but I would rather put it in a page. It's just a personal habit. You can put it in the place you want. Header.jsx RFCE to create a boilerplate. Once you have that, create a CSS file for it straight away. And import that CSS back into your main component. Same folder. And you have that. So now you have your header ready. And the second question is, what are you going to have inside the header? One of the key things to put in the header, remember, this is the header part. We will have a toggle button, which is our menu button. When we click on it, it should change the width of the banner and also the side menu, so they can have a bit of expansion and shrinking effect. And over here, we will have one icon for the library, one for the shopping bag, and the other one is just a user avatar. So those are the few items that we're going to create in the header. Going back to the editor, we're not going to use div for the header. The standard way is that in HTML, we have a header tag to do that job. So we use the header tag. And inside the header tag, the first thing we're going to have is the toggle menu icon. So we give it an A, and the class name going to be menu. So we have that. And the second thing, we're going to have our user item, but they are sitting on two sides, on two ends. One, the manual one sitting on the far left, the user stuff sitting on the far right. So we're only going to have two parts over here. So I'm going to create a big one called user items. All the user items will be put on the right. So let's just wrap them around with one big div. So the first thing is our icon. We'll have one icon for the like button, and also we'll also have the icons for the shopping bag. So let's just put another one. Again, I'm repeating myself. Supposedly this should be wrapped into separate component, but we can do it later on. And then there's going to be another icon. Put it over here. So in the menu, let's go back to the bootstrap icon to see which one is going to be good. I found a slider one, which is very, very suitable for our scenario, sliders, because our situation is like a slider. So I'm just going to copy that and put it in the angle brackets. And for that one, another one, we're going to have our hot. So I'm going to use a hot fill to do this job, this one. Copy that, going back over here. And then the last one, we're going to have a shopping bag. In the previous days, people all were using shopping cart. That's for e-commerce website, but now the shopping bag icon is getting more and more popular. So what we're going to have a bag fill. And copy that. So now we have all the stuff. In the user item, we have the icon for that, and we have the icon for the backfill. Underneath, I'm going to create a span. Remember, we have to show the user the number of the item that has been liked or added into your bag. So we put a span to hold that. We call it a like. So far, we just give a random number of 0. And same one for this one. Give it a span, call it a bag, and a random number of 0. Later on, this figure is going to be dynamic from our database. So we have those two. And the one last thing in the user item is going to be the avatar. So we're going to create a div, class name avatar, where you can hold the user's image. Give the image, and create A first. Underneath we put the image. So here we put our user image later on. And after that we have the image, and you have to have the user name and stuff, all of those things. So what we do is we create another div, give the class name of user, and inside here we give a span. And you can put the actual username here. Supposedly this should be from the database to show the dynamic username as well, but in our project, we're not going to touch upon the user page so far. In the future video and future project, I will illustrate how to create a dynamic user profile on the web page. But our project has the focus of shopping bag and search and filter, all of those things. And give it an anchor called view profile. So we have set up the CSS structures for everything, and the next part is just to put it somewhere in the banner. So we have our header ready. We're just going to import that header over here. Yep, so it gets imported and put it right over here. If you're going back to the browser, it looks pretty ugly, but it's all there. That basically means that our structure has no problem. All the component has been correctly set up and exported and imported. So the next step is to build our CSS file for the header. But before that, I'm going to copy and paste the user profile image into this folder. Just for this video purpose, I make that image static. In the real world, this image should be dynamic as well. So just find that image, put it over here. And once we have that image, I can go back to the header part to actually just import it. Import user image from images, user images. So the React works in a way that all the things must be imported as an object, including the image. If you put in that URL right over here, the thing won't work. You have to import it as a separate object and put it over here in the JavaScript, the curly braces, as a user image. So in that way, the user image can be shown on the browser. So that's how it works. So far it looks pretty ugly because we haven't done the CSS. So going to the header CSS, we're going to set the header, the generic setting for the header first. Firstly, make it a position absolute, so it's sitting right on the top, and make a width of 100%. Display flags and space between, so everything gets a space around. Give it alignment center, that means the vertical you want it to be sitting in the middle. Give a proper padding and make sure it stands out from the rest of the component. And I go back to the browser, you can see it's spread out. Just because the image size is huge, it still doesn't look quite properly. But don't worry, we'll set it very soon. For the menu, this one over here, we're going to give it a styling like this. We're going to adjust the font size and color so it looks much nicer. And then for the user image, user item, which is the part beside it, all of this part, we're going to make a display flags and make sure it has a proper weight. For all of those icons, user item icon, these are the icons, these are the icons, this view. We give a styling like this. Also give a neumorphism box shadow so it can look nice and match the entire style. And also for the toSpan element, this toSpan element is to hold the numbers of likes and the numbers of items in our bag. So we're going to give a setting like this. And if we're going back, it looks much nicer now, except the image. And then we're going to touch upon the avatar. That avatar is also going to have a certain width and height. We give a display of flags, so it will spread around. And as soon as we adjust the image size, you will feel that it looks a lot nicer now, except the two last bit. And then we put in the avatar stuff. Something like that. This is to control the user. Going back. Not finished yet. And then the last bit, we're just going to have a color for the span and also reset the user text decoration to none. That looks much better. Actually, I think, what if I make that slightly bigger? Make that 0.8. This one's 0.7 to save it holds. No. Just make it going back. Yeah, this is the perfect font size for that item to be held inside this small area. So this is pretty much our header. And now the key job for the header, the banner, and also the side menu is this button. As soon as we click on this, the size of the toolpath should change. How are we going to do that? And then inside here, we have to think which one is the one that we're going to click on. We're going to click on the menu, which is this one. You're going to have to write a function over here or somewhere. So once the user clicks on that, it triggers the animation by turning on and turning off the active status for that the banner and the side menu width to change. But the key thing is, the problem is, where do we write that function? Do we going to create a function over here, or we're going to create a function somewhere else? Essentially, the place that will trigger this change is in the main, because the side menu and the banner are all contained in the main. This is the place where these two components change. So the function should be raised over here, should be handled over here. But we need to raise that function inside the header where the menu icon is. So this is another principle in React. We'll raise the component in the child component, raise the events in the child component, and we handle that events in our parents component. Let's do so. So here is our parents component main. So inside the main, what I will do, I'll create a use React hook. Let's just import that. Use state hook. And over here, we set up a state for that active status of the banner and the side menu. So const and active set active equals to use state. Initially, we want that state to be false because we haven't triggered that active behavior yet. And below it, we're going to raise a function to handle that. We call it a function const handle toggle active. This is called a JavaScript arrow function, just equal to give the fat arrow curly braces. And we set the active status to the opposite of the current active status. So if current is, we're going to set it to true. If current is a true, we're going to set it to false. This is how it works. So you don't have to worry about if it's a true or false. It's always going to the opposite direction. So as soon as we have that, and what we're going to do, we're going to inject this variable active into side menu as a property, because we have to let our child component listen that whether you're currently active or not. So we put it in over here, and it's a typo, active. We're also going to put that variable over here, because remember, the part that reads these events is in the header, our menu. So we have to pass that function as a property into our child component for it to read that event. So what we're doing here, we're going to create a new property called toggle active for the header. That one equals to handle toggle active function. So we pass that function in as a property of header so it can raise that function. Okay, that's how it works. And also we're going to put the active setting into banner as well, because our banner also have to change according to the active status. So what I do, I cut a name, which is the static part, and I wrapped with a curly braces because we're going to write a temporary literal. We put in the backtick, put in banner, and then I'm going to put in the JavaScript in the $sign and a double curly braces. We're going to check with the browser or the DOM if our banner is active. If it's active, we're going to show the class name of active. Otherwise, we'll just leave it undefined. So this is how you can handle the conditional class name using the state variable. Okay. So now we're just gonna leave until for this one to trigger that. We pass in that property, and we have to consume that property inside our header. So over here, we do the object destructuring, and we consume that property in. And we know that this function, this property is this function, and we have to use it somewhere over here. So in the menu, on click events, supposed to be raised here. Whenever you click on the menu, you trigger that function. What we do, we put that function in. So in this way, you have the function over here. That's how it works. Okay. Let's see if this thing actually working on the side. And supposedly we should have the class name change. So go back to the browser. If you click it now, nothing gonna happen because we haven't set the active status yet. But I'm just gonna open that this one. I want you to show the change. If we click it, hopefully we can. Yeah, as you could see, that banner there, that one gets changed. You see that active thing, it gets toggled. So the banner is actually working. And also, if the banner is working, we're going to set to the menu as well, because in the main part, we pass in this active status as a property, but we haven't set it in the menu yet. So over here, in the class name of the menu, we're going to make it a conditional as well. So just cut the static part and put on the curly braces, put on the backtick. You're going to write JavaScript code here, and then always write the static part of the class name first, and then you input that money sign and also the double curly braces and check with it. If it's active, we're going to turn on the active status. Otherwise, it's undefined. And of course, this active should come in from the property active. Right. Why is that? Because remember in our main, we pass in that active as a property. This property gets injected and consumed here, and to handle that conditional rendering of the class. Okay. So once it's done, if we go back, just pay attention to this bit. Click it. You will see the active showing on both the side menu and the banner menu and the banner class name. And click again, and you will see undefined pops out. Undefined doesn't mean anything, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah, you can see that thing goes away. Soon as we have the active in our class name, how are we going to handle the change of the width? I think you're all smart enough to know that we're going to handle this using CSS, right? We just need to put a CSS.active to handle the width of it. Very, very easy. Okay. So we go back to our CSS file of the side menu to make slight adjustment. This one. That'll change the width. So inside our side menu CSS, I'm going to put in the active setting. So when the side menu is on active, we make sure the width is getting smaller to 7%. And also we're going to trigger all the adjustment to the logo, the brand name, and stuff. Because remember, this thing is currently set on active. If we turn it off, the home will show the category, this text word will be shown, and this one's looking horizontally, displayed in row. But if we shrink it, the name should be hidden, and also this thing should be displayed, the social part should be displayed vertically by column. All of those change must also be set over here. And also if you want to change the font size and stuff, this is the perfect place to go. Okay, so that's how we make the adjustment to the side. And we're going back to the main.js for the banner part. We also need to set the active status for the banner as well. So let's just do that. Banner.active is quite easy. If the side menu takes 7% on active, then the main should be taking the remaining 93% on active. That'll make sense, right? 7% plus 93% equals to the whole width. And we look at that. It moves very smoothly for this two part. And now you can have this animated, very smoothly transitioned banner and side menu for your dashboard. Really, really cool, huh? All right. And the next part, we're going to build our home page, which is the page over here, the main carousel, and also the card to be presented on the page. So, and we're going to close off a few things that is irrelevant so far. The side menu CSS, this one, and the header, So we're left with the main. And down below the header, what we're going to create is a container. This is the Bootstrap thing. Give it a container fluid. That allows your section to extend the whole width. And inside here, what we're going to do, we're going to create a home section on the home page that takes this part. So in the page folder, we'll create a new file called home.jsx. Enter RFCE, give that boilerplate. And very soon after that, we're going to create a CSS file for home as well. Home. And we import it back over here. And here we can import the home component or the home section we just created. Home. Done. Okay. So the home has been successfully imported and is written over here. That's it. And in the home part, what we're going to have is two things, the carousel and the cards, the game cards. So both requires data. So the data has to be mapped into the carousel. We're not going to hard code every single item inside the image carousel. We're not going to hard code every single card. So all the things must be mapped by data. Therefore, we have to think about where to put those data. If we put the data in the home component, well, it's okay to make the request to the data API and fetch data over home and map it over here. That's absolutely okay. But what about the other sections that we're going to write later on? Say, for example, the categories, the shopping bag, and also the my libraries, all of those things. Are they going to use the data again? If so, home is not the best position to import or fetch the data. We're supposed to import or fetch data at the super global level, which is the main in this case. If you want to import it in the app, that's also okay, but main is good enough. And once we import or fetch the data from the API, we're going to map into home. We're going to put the data into home and then map into the carousel items, map into the card items. That's the logic for us to build. So first thing first, we're going to have to fetch data API. The data API I have provided for you in JSON format. I'm also going to share the JSON files, which I spent a very long time to summarize and compile in the description link. So you can use it straight away if you want to code along. So inside the public folder, this is a public folder. I'm going to build another folder called API because this is where we're going to store our data and copy in that game data. This is what I created. Okay. In this file, we have 8 data for our games, and we're going to fetch everything from here. That's one thing. The other folder I'm going to create in the public folder is called the assets. And assets folder, we're going to have our images stored. Okay. So in a real project, those assets or the images will be stored in your online drives. Say, for example, you can have an Amazon online drive like an Amazon M3 bucket, or you're using any kind of a online disk or online storage systems. You can just know how to fetch the routes of the image you stored in that online disk. But so far, we're building on the local environment, so we're just going to paste all the game data, game image, into our assets folder like this. So now we have our background image for those 8 games that we mentioned in our JSON data. Okay, so we have our image ready, we have our API ready, we are now ready to build. So in here, in our main, what I will do, I will write a function to fetch data. But if you think about it, once we fetch data, where are we going to store the data? We're going to have to store the data in the local states, right? So before we even fetch data, we're going to create a state component called games. That's going to be used to store the API data. And the function will be set games because we need to change the states later on if we need to. That's going to be the use state hook. Inside the brackets, what are we going to put? We're going to put an empty array, okay? This empty array means that the initial state of the game variable is empty array. Later on, once we fetch the data, we're going to set the game to that data and change our game to that data, okay? As soon as we have that, we are ready to fetch. So down here, we'll write our fetch data function. That's also going to be a arrow function. So inside we write fetch. Fetch is a built-in, very handy function that we can put in the routes of our URL or the data API here straight away. So in our case, if we're going back to our browser and we type in localhost 3000, and we're just going to go with /API/ our game data .json, and you will see all of those data has been rendered in our routes. Okay, this is our API. We're going to fetch using this localhost API as a mock API, and once we have the data, and we map it. So this looks slightly nicer than a standard view because I put in a Google Chrome extension called JSON View. If you want your JSON code looks better, nicer in your browser, you can also install that Google extension called JSON View, VUE, JSON View. And we're just going to have this route back, put in a single quotes, that's our API. So we fetch our data from API, then that's going to return us a promise. We have to decompose that promise. Response, decompose that with response.json because we know it's going to be JSON data that we are handling with. And then once we handle that JSON data, we have the data back. That's the real data. How are we going to store that data? We're going to store the data in games. Okay. So far we just write a function saying set game to that data. So here's how we obtain the data. This data will be the same as the JSON data. Once we fetched it, we put it into our own local state, which is the game variable. We set it to data. Okay. So far so good. What if we encounter some error in the data fetching process? We're going to have to handle that error in the localhost development area. Under this environment, we're just going to console log that error so far. Yep. So this is how you're going to handle the error. In a real project, you can show this error message on your screen or somewhere. Okay, you can create a pop-ups to let a user know that you have an error of what kind, what sort of a issue you are having when you fetch the data, so the user can have a view of it. And let's see if we have fetched data successfully. I'm just going to try console.log over here of that data. And we have to fetch it. When is the best position to fetch data? Just think about it. When your page first mounted on your DOM, right? When your page first mounted on the DOM, you don't want to show the user a blank page. You want to show the user a page full of the dynamic data. So that's the position we're going to use effect hook, because use effect hook is whenever your page changes or first gets rendered on the DOM, this function inside use effect will be called. So here we use the use effect hook. Inside it is going to be an arrow function, and comma, square brackets. Inside this curly brackets, we're going to call this fetch data function. Otherwise, this function will never be triggered. Right? We run a function, we have to trigger it for the functions to work. So inside here, basically means when the page gets mounted on the DOM, we're going to use the use effect hook to fetch data. That's what it means. And this function will only be fetched once because we put the dependency empty array. The dependency empty array means the effect hook will depend on nothing to be triggered again. If we put in some variables, as long as that variable changes, that use effect hook will be called again. So this function will be called again. However, if it depends on nothing, basically means that it only will be triggered once, which is the time the page gets mounted on your DOM. Okay, let's see if it works. Yep, going back to the browser, and I just opened up my console. There's a few bugs in it. Let's see, a class name error. This is what I told you, because we copied something from the Bootstrap icon, and that we didn't change the class to class name. That's why they popped up this error. And there's one mapping that we haven't given the key property. Let's see where it is. But other than that, it looks all good. The main focus is to look at this array, because we console.log, that JSON array is coming up. You see, we have all of those list of the JSON items showing up here, which is this file. So we have, that means that we have successfully fetched the data, and we console.log that data, which is okay now. So we can remove it and keep moving to our next step. So now we have our game data ready. So we're going to pass that game data, which we set over here this game variable into our home component because we're going to use it over there. So for home, we give it a variable name, a property name called games, which is equal to the state variable games. So these two are different. The first part is the property name that we give to the home component. The second part is the state variable that we set with the useState hook, and also we set the game to data. Okay, and now the home will have the game data. Let's go into the home. Put it over here. So inside the home, we delete this div. We're going to create it with a section. Section, give the ID home. And we're going to give it's a class name of home as well. And inside it, we're going to have a container fluid. And we're going to wrap things with a row. So this row is going to handle our carousel. And the next row we're going to use to handle our costs or our title, our section title. So because we're going to show the carousel first, how are we going to show this carousel? We're going to use a third-party library called Swiper, which we have installed at the very beginning of this video using npm install Swiper. If you go to get started, you will see that the code is there. And then to use it, we just have to put all of this code into our React file. It shows a perfect document how you're gonna import the stuff, how you're gonna write the component in a swiper way. So I'm just gonna copy and paste the thing that I write. But before we do so, think about this carousel is going to be in a separate component, or we're gonna put the code right over here. I would rather to put it into a separate component, right? Because it is independent, need to be isolated, managed. So in the component folder, we're just going to create a new file called GameSwiper.jsx rfce to create a boilerplate. And as soon as we have the GameSwiper, we're going to create a CSS file for it as well. .css, and then we import it into our GameSwiper. Import that, so all in. And in our home page, we're just gonna import our GameSwiper component. Swiper, so it's gonna check with you, are you gonna import the component GameSwiper from the component folder? Yes, tab, and then close the angle bracket. You can see this one has been correctly imported from that directory. So this is how we set up. And you also remember that from the main, we passed that game property with the game data into home component. Here we're going to have to do a bit of a thing called property drilling. For small and medium-sized projects, it's okay to do property drilling. But if your layer getting too large, say for example you have many child component under that parent component, maybe 4 or 5, this is not the best way to handle the property. We should be using some global way to handle that. But that's another story. But for this medium-sized project, it's still okay to drill it to 1 or 2 layers. It's not going to be very complex. So we consume the property games over here, and then we just send that games to our carousel, because carousel is the actual place actually needed the game data, right? But we generate and fetch the data from the super parents component main, and we pass it down to home, and then from the home we pass it down to the GameSwiper. So here it's going to have that games. So these games will be this game, and this game will be this game, and this game will be this game, and this game is going to be the data, and this data is the API. Okay, so all linked up. And now the GameSwiper have the data. We're just going into it to see how we're gonna handle that data inside Swiper. So firstly, we're going to import all the dependencies for our Swiper to work. So I'm just going to copy and paste this prepared file over here. And the ideal way is to write your own customized CSS file after you import those Swiper CSS file. Because if you have any customized change to the Swiper, this one is going to override whatever happened in this one. If you put it before, it's not going to work. So you have to put your own CSS file after the imported swiper CSS file. And we're going to use the swiper and swiper slider. That's going to be the two things. And also we're going to use the module. Couple modules. You need to import the module first before you use it. So this few effects, cover flow, navigation, autoplay are the few modules that we're going to use. And down the bottom is just going to be the swiper. So what we do, because we already import the swiper from the swiper/React, we could just use that. We say that swiper, put it into a bracket first, and then we put the swiper angle bracket swiper, and then close that. That'll give you the whole opening and closing tag. And inside the swiper, we're gonna wrap the swiper slide with that. So the next step is to put in all the settings for that swiper. These are pretty customizable because the swiper documents does not provide the perfect settings for the swiper. You need to adjust all the settings based on your need. In this case, you might need to autoplay. In the next swiper, you probably need a navigation, a pagination. All of those settings gonna be decided by you. Whatever you need, you put it and set it over here. Okay. So I'm just gonna put my setting, copy and paste that straight away to the swiper. This is what we're going to use. We're gonna use the effect of cover flow. We're gonna make sure it can be grabbed. Navigation, we want it to loop, set it to true, and we want it to be centered. The site preview is auto, depending on the screen size. And also we have to set that cover flow. This will give you the depth and the width and the perspective of the 3D effects on the carousel. This is how we set it for the autoplay. We do need autoplay at the end, but so far I'm just going to comment that out because if it's an autoplaying, we can't manage it at the building time. So once we finish the entire project, I will put it back. And the module we used is effects over cover flow, navigation, and autoplay. You put the module here, but make sure you import it above the function. Okay, if you don't import it, even though you put it here, it's not gonna work. Yeah. So soon as we have that swiper thing, what we can do is that we map the data into our slides. So it'll be the game, which we pass in over here to the swiper, and we take that property games, and we map it inside our swiper. Give a curly braces, and then games.map. Again, the higher order array function is very important. Game fat arrow, and then we give a brackets. Inside the brackets, we put in the swiper slides. Swiper slides. So this must be put into the angle brackets. So there you go, we have it. And what we're gonna do so far, we're just gonna type a text word to see if it works. H1 slide, or we map the data from the game. We just tap something from the game. Game dot. Let's see which property we need. We're gonna use the game.title and put it into probably H4. H1 is too huge. And then we have to give a key to that swiper ID, swiper slide as well. That'll be a game._ID, which is this one, okay? And then once we have that, we pretty much will have pre-built the swiper. Of course, this is not a finalized job. There's a heaps of card design between. We just want to test if the slider works now. So going back to the browser, as you can see, if I reload it, yeah, we have that thing there with the name and everything. Because I deactivate that autoplay, so it just stopped there. But we definitely have imported everything successfully. And this is the title. So now let's remove the title. The test is over. We have done right. And let's just build the card. ideally, you should put the slider card into a separate component as well. And even this is entire thing, but we're just going to build it right over here because this is an easy refactoring. After we've done that, we're just going to put it into a separate file. So far, we say that we need a div called game slider. And inside that, think about what we're going to have on a carousel. The major thing is the image, right? We're going to have the image. Alt, give it a name called maybe just game image. And the source. This source is coming from the JSON, because in the JSON we have that image property which defines the URL that stores that image. So we're just going to put it there. Game.image. I have that. And then the second thing is we're going to put the content that's showing the information of that game, like the game title, descriptions, and few buttons there. So what we're going to do, we're going to div.content, class name content, and in here we'll give it a h2, and inside h2 we want to put the game title there. And after it is going to be the paragraph where we put in the game description. This all coming from the JSON. That's the description, that's the title, and so loaded over here, right? And after that, on our home page, the carousel cards also going to have quite a few buttons. So we're going to put a buttons section over here. And then the first button we want is a order button. And we can put in a word order now. This is static, that's why I just hard-coded here. And then other than that button, we also have a second button called play the video. So we're just going to say play, play button. And in here, we want to have a dynamic showing. It's not going to be static, which means when the user playing the button, the play button logo or the icon should change to pause. When the user stops pausing, it should go back. They're supposed to be in a toggle, right? But so far, I'm just going to put in one. Later on, I will show you how to make the things dynamic. So give it a span and class name going to be pause. And inside here, we're just going to grab that button from the Bootstrap icon, pause. I'm using the fat pause field in here, and change it to class name immediately. This is kind of annoying because later on you have developed so much and you lose it yourself. You forget which class you have changed to class name, which has not, and you have to go back quite a lot of time to figure out one. And down the bottom, we put in another one, which is the play button. And inside here, again, we go back to the Bootstrap icon to search that play button. I'm going to use the play field, which matches the pause field. So that's that, right? So this thing going to be quite local, so we can deal with it right now. The logic to show one and hide the other is to put a status on the setting. So if the button is active, we're going to show the first one, otherwise it's going to be the next one. So it's a very simple logic, right? So here, we're just going to use a hook to solve that problem. And going back to the top, we import the use state hook. And inside our component, game, we set that active state, const, if I could type, active, set active, equals to the use state. Initially, we're going to set it to false. If it's false, the active is not turning on, and only one button gets to show, and if it's inactive, the other button gets to show, and we hide the first button in CSS. Right? That's the logic. So next to it, we're going to write a function to handle this change, which is the const handle toggle video. This is another arrow function. So we set active to. You should probably get used to this kind of writing. The opposite of the current status of active, right? It's always going to the opposite. So you don't have to concern if it's true or false now. And then we copy that function name because over here, at a button, we're going to put that function there by saying, on click, I'm going to trigger that function, handle toggle video. Do you think this is finished? Not yet. Because we only by clicking this function, we're going to toggle the local state, but the local state must link to the CSS class name. So here we take that static class name and put on backtick, make it dynamic. The $, double curly braces, and we're going to put in the conditional rendering of the class name. If the current status is active, question mark, we're going to turn the active on in the class name. Otherwise, it's undefined, or you put an empty string there, it's also okay. It works all fine. Or no, it's also working. So this is how we're going to handle it. So now job's getting easy. In the CSS, we're just going to say, if the play button is active, we show this one, and this one will display none. Otherwise, it's the other way around, right? So the thing's getting easy. It wouldn't be messy. So now we get all this. If we're going back to the, wow, this looks, even though it's scary, but I'm pretty sure it's working because the image size hasn't been controlled yet in the CSS, but you can see we are able to handle it now. So the next job is going to the CSS to give our game card and game slider a beautiful looking. So this is the game swiper. So in this game swiper CSS, we're going to set the swiper and the swiper slide. We're going to give a width of 90%. Do not take the whole width, but that's going to be quite wide. And we're going to give a padding of a bottom of 30 pixels, and also we're going to make sure the image looks smaller and nicer. Once we've done that, we're going back to the browser to see, yeah, that looks slightly better because the image gets controlled so far. And we're going back to here. Just keep doing, gotta have predefine our slider. And also, once we've done that, we can see this thing gets much better. But if you look at the image is not showing the entire image, it's only showing the part of it because we haven't set the image. And also, this image looks very, very bright to me. If we want to write any text on it, I don't think the text is going to show very clearly. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a shade cover on top of that slider, which is this one. Give a background nearly transparent but slightly black. And we're going back, that looks much better. And also, I'm going to control the image. For that image, we're going to give a width of 100%, height 100%, object fit cover. So this will show the entire image and also make the position center. Once we've done that, you can see this image will be perfectly showed over here. And our carousel is nearly finished. And we look at that, this carousel has been attached to the top. It's supposed to have a padding or some space between the header and the carousel, otherwise it will hide overflow with this header part. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to the main.css part to add a general setting for our section. What we're going to do here, because remember, not only this is the first section, we're going to have quite a few other sections as well. Later on, we're going to have a category, library, and bag. So those things are going to be switching to each other by popping up and down. So we need to deal with the section class as well. So let's just put it down for now. We're going to give a section a class name active. When it's active, we're going to make it top 100 pixels and opacity 1. When it's inactive, we're going to have to give opacity of 0 and to hide it. And if I put in that home section will disappear straight away because we'll make the section inactive. And going back to home, if we give that a section class, active, it'll show off straight away. And also you can see the padding is correct because we have predefined that section padding using this top. So we give it a padding over there. So it's not going to top 100 pixel. It's not going to sitting right at the top. So that thing is done. And going back to our swiper slides, let's see after image, what we're going to deal with is the navigation button. So far the navigation is working, but it looks pretty ugly because this is the original looking of it. Why don't we just give a bit of a styling to it? So we can do some styling to our button. So this is two parts of the lines. Once we put in, the style will changes. In CSS class name, the swiper button, the pre one and the next one looks like this. And also, there's also comes with a pseudo element to decide its background. So once we put in those two lines, the button will look much nicer, like that. So that's done. And also, have a look at the slider. Other than the image, we have a whole bunch of content to show up. So going back here, I'm going to show off that content. So content, we're going to make sure it stands out. Otherwise, it will be hidden from the behind. And now you can see the content. And then we're going to define the title and also the description. H2 and P are what we used here for this two part. Going back to the browser, it looks much nicer now. And we haven't defined the button down the bottom. So we're just going to do that. First, we're going to give a generic setting for the button. And once we've done that, you will see that it looks much better now. And for each individual one, see how many buttons we have. Over here we have the order button, we have the play button, which includes the pause one and the play one. Oh, sorry, that's a typo. Lucky that I found it. And then we have to define each one of those. For the order button, we just give it a nice padding and a decent background of our theme background. That'll make it look nicer. And for the play button, we just want to make sure that it looks like all round, slightly bigger. But remember that when we toggle this button, we're going to have to turn on and off that active status of the play button. So only one of the play or pause button will show. How do we handle that? So initially we want to show one and hide the other one. So we put this play button play, display block, and the pause one display none. So initially when you go there, it will only be the play button, the playing one gets to show, the pause one display none. When you turn on the active, it should swap. But the thing is, if I just purely put in this one, play button active play, display none, and the play button active pause, display block, this is going to swap them around, right? Let's see if it's working. It is working. It toggles. It changed to another one, but don't you notice one problem? When I toggle this one, the card besides gets toggled as well because this is going to be mapped to every single card. Using our JavaScript higher order array function, this one gets mapped into all of our cards. So every single card will have this function, every single card will have this toggle active. And then that's not going to be the way I'm supposed to make it work. How are we going to handle that? This is the beauty of the swiper. Because swiper have an active for the active cards. So whichever one on the top showing to the user, this will be the active slide. The remaining one will not be the active slide. So we only want the active slide when this one is active to show the button toggle effect, right? So we're going to use the slider active effect added before this. So what did it tell you is that the swiper slide, whenever the slide is active, the play button active will take effect. Otherwise, it won't. So same applies to the second one. As soon as we've done those, if we go back, this is the active one. and that thing works on this one only. The other few slides are non-active, so it would not be affected by this CSS effect, right? This is how we make it work. Very, very awesome. So each individual one gets isolated to each other and perfectly controlled. So now the question comes to, why do we need this play and pause button? Because when we click on this, supposedly there should be no trailer video comes out from the corner for the viewer to see. And we haven't done that video yet. So what I'm going to do now is going back to our component and add that video back into our component. So here, right below the image, what we can do is that we create another div and give the class of video. And then here, we're just going to import the YouTube iframe, which is the embedded code. You can right-click the YouTube video and click on embed code, and you will have this iframe straight away. It has been predefined for the width and height. And also, we're just going to put in the source of our game trailer, because remember, in our game data, I have prepared a trailer URL for you, which is the YouTube embedment trailer source. And then we can just use it here, and it will fetch that video from YouTube and embed it into your website. But this is not the ideal way that I like to do it. The way I like to do it is to use the real video saved in our disk or our online drive to do it. But for copyright issue, I don't have the video for those game trailers, so we just use the YouTube one instead. And once we've done that, we have to see what's going on there. We put in the iframe. If we go to the browser, nothing gets to see because we haven't done the CSS part to define it. So going back here, we're just going to do a slide more CSS for the iframe. Here down the bottom, we put in the code for the iframe. And also, if we're going back, in the CSS, we make the iframe opacity 0 and the transform scale to 0. So we hide it at the initial state because we don't want to show it initially. When we're going to show it, when the user clicks the play button, we're going to show the video to let them watch the play. So we're going to have to set another status when the user clicks on the play to trigger this video. How are we going to do that? Remember that in our code, we have predefined the active status for the menu. We can use that active to trigger the video as well. So whenever the button got activated, the video is supposed to be activated as well, right? So we're just going to cut the static class name here, and then we put in the curly braces, backtick, the $sign. We're going to use the conditional rendering, put back the static class name, and here we're just going to do the typical thing like active. We're going to ask the question. If it's active, we're going to show the active class, otherwise we'll keep it undefined. So as soon as we have that, we're going back to our CSS, and we put on the active CSS styling for it. If the video is active, we want the iframe to be shown by these 3 lines of code, right? So now we go back to there to see if it works. You can see that video comes straight away from the corner because I have predefined the very nice colorful border for it, which matches the entire design style of the website. And it shrinks down from the right top corner, it disappears, and it zooms in from the right top corner as well. Very, very cool, right? So this card is a very sophisticated card that contains too much features in it. It has that all content mapped from somewhere else. It is itself is wipeable, clickable, and also you can play that trailer video for that individual slider without affecting all others. Very, very cool, right? So, and a slight way to improve it is just to use your own video instead of to let the user click the YouTube play button again. If you use your own video, as soon as the user click on this button, it's supposed to play the video straight away instead of click again. But this is just like the imaginary video that we borrowed from YouTube, so you have to click it again. Yeah. Right, we have done the carousel part. Looks all fine to me. And back to here, we can see we got heaps of code left in our game slider. So what I'm going to do, you can leave the code here as a part of the game swiper, but ideally, because it's been mapped into a swiper slide, you are supposed to wrap this up and refactor it into a separate component. So let's create a new component name called, this is going to be our game slide, game slide, game slider, game slide, just game slide, JSX, RFCE, to have that boilerplate done. As soon as we've done that, what we're gonna do, we're gonna cut the entire thing over here. So now it's taking away that swiper slide into our game slide, and they need a property of game, so we're gonna have to inject this one, the game one. So now we have it. And of course, we do not need the key ID over here because we need it in the parents component when we map it. So we'll just leave it there. So this one looks all fine to me so far. We haven't used anything that haven't been imported over here. And then on this page, I'm just going to map the game into our component game slider, which is the second one, and then put a key in. So the key will only be assigned to the one you're mapped into, which is our game slide component. So once you've done that, going back to the browser, there's a couple of things that we have changed, which lead to a problem. We have those functions and actives that is not being set properly. So what we can do, and also the slide is not imported correctly. And for this one, I'm gonna use that over here. We do not need a swiper. So this one in, so that error gone, we fix one bug. And we do not need a slider on this page. And also the second one is that we set the status in the parents page, but those events are going to be handled in the child page. So what we're gonna do, we can rewrite this code in our child component, but what I'm thinking of is to just pass them as a property into it. So here we're gonna say active equals to curly braces active, and handle toggle video, we're just gonna say toggle video, handle toggle video. So we have those two inserted as a property, and we can use them over here. So on top of accepting game as a property, we're gonna object destructuring the active and also toggle video. So now we have the active in. The toggle video will be used over here, which is that, toggle video. So this one will be this function will be this function is over here. So just one layer of property drilling is not too bad. Let's see, cannot read the property undefined image. There's another error pops up. Let's fix that. There's one image that cannot be accessed so far. Yeah, that's because we're taking the game property, but we haven't inserted over here. So we're just going to key in game equals to that game. So that game comes in as a property of the game slide, and the game slide taking that game and use it everywhere. Going back to the browser, it looks all fine now. Let's see, refresh it. Should be showing off. Hi guys, I have just spent a bit of time to figure out where the bug is. It turns out the swiper does not allow this swiper slide to be wrapped to a separate component. So this slide and this swiper wrapper have to be on the same page for the swiper to work. So we're not aware of that initially. So I done a bit of a re-refactoring to my code and to make things work. What I did is that instead we rewrap all the swiper slide. This is not my built-in component. This is provided by swiper, the swiper document. So instead of wrap that into a separate component, we leave it on the same page of the swiper, and inside, we wrap everything inside that swiper slide into a separate component called game slide, and that thing goes to here, game slide. So on this page, we're just gonna have that div that we previously write, and we wrap everything, all the images, videos, and contents into that game slider, and that game slider gets exported as a component of game slide into this page. So when we do the mapping, we still map into swiper slide, but in the slide, it contains the game slide component, where we can take the game from here and also the active and the toggle function above here. So now once you've done that, go back to the browser page, it works all perfect now. It looks exactly the same, nothing changes. This is all good. I know that sometimes writing the refactoring stuff can be a pain in the ass, but it's just a very good habit. Even though it takes time for you to rewrap everything and debug it, but during the process you learn a lot of stuff and you improves your React skills. Comparing with writing everything on a single page code, that would be very, very unprofessional. If you're writing code like that, it will never get you become a developer in the real world. If you face interview with a company or they ask you to write some code, and they say the way you write a code, they wouldn't hire you. That would be a very unprofessional way because you are not taking the advantage of React. React allows the people to build a separate component. So that component only deal with itself. Whenever you want to use it, you just import it. Instead of we put everything on the same place. You see, once we finish the big project for that swiper, you will see that the line only goes up to like within 60 line, which is very, very ideal. And if you put everything over here, that will go probably beyond 200 lines, which is very messy. Okay, so this is how we're gonna do with the slides. So once we've done that, we're just gonna go back to the home. We have used the first row to write this game swiper, and then we're gonna go to the second row where we're gonna create some details like titles and also the subtitles for this page. So we just say div.row. We'll give a new row, and then we'll give a div column on large screen equals to 6 column, which is half. And then because we need 2 of those, I'm just gonna copy that. And inside here, we're just gonna give a h2, and we call it a section title, tab, games on promotion. So this is going to be our games on promotion, which is a discounted one, going to show on the front page. Remember, we are building a game store, a game shop, not just for the player to play the game straight away. This is for them to buy and download and download the digital game so they can play. And then the second part, in this column, we're going to do view more games. And we're going to put in an arrow to make it look better. So we're looking for is the right arrow right, the thin one. Yeah, this one looks better. And then we just copy that in. Remember to change the class name. Even though I say so, I personally constantly forget that as well. And I just trying to remind myself every time I use something from the outside. So as soon as you have those, this class, let's give this part a class. And we're supposed to wrap this in angle tag to make it clickable. And give that a class name, viewMo. So once started, it looks all fun to me now, and we go back to the page. It's there, and that one hasn't been styled. So it's on the home section. So we're going to do a bit of a CSS coding to the home. So I'm just going to copy and paste in those few lines that we just write. So we want a section title to be uppercase, and also the view mode, we're going to have a text decoration of none, color to white, readjust the font size and transition, give it a hover effect. And going back, it looks all fine now. And one last thing is that it's not aligning correctly. This one should be on the far right, but now it's sitting in the middle. So what I will do, I'll go back to the home page to adjust the line over here. Instead of using the CSS code, I also want to show you that the alignment can be perfectly done with the help of Bootstrap. The Bootstrap has a built-in thing called display flagged, justify content to the end. So that will be the same as how you write in the CSS for the display flags file. And if we move back, you can see that one aligns in the correct position. All right. And you want to sit in the middle, we just say align items center. So that'll make sure those two are aligned in the center as well, vertically. And that looks good to me, which we build our second row. The first row is the carousel. The second row is the section title and subtitle. So we're gonna have build our third row. The third row is going to contain our demonstration cards for the user to like or add to the back. So because we have given the name of the promotion, ideally we'll put all the discounted item on the front page. So we create the third row over here, div row, and in here you just think about, is this card going to be in a separate component, or should I just write all the cards codes over here? Of course it's going to be in a separate component. So straight away go into the components folder and you create that component called game cards. This has nothing to do with the swiper, so don't you worry about the wrapping and working. It's absolutely going to work. So we build our game card and then RFCE to create that boilerplate. As soon as you have that boilerplate, you want to create a CSS file for it as well. Game card.css, and then you import that back. Import game cards. .css. So we have those two all linked up, and this one should be over here. But remember, we take the data from its parent component main. We want to map those games data into our games card. And if you look at our game, those are the data that we use. Some of them are discount, some of them are without discount. So we're just going to do the mapping over here. For this course, I'm just going to make the work simple. Take the game variable that we get from the property, and we just want the first 4 items to be presented on the home page, because otherwise it will overflow. And to trim a array, we use the JavaScript function slice, and we want it from the first one to the fourth one. Fourth one is not included. This is from the index 0 to index 4, but 4 is not included. Ideally, that would be just literally 0 to 3. So that's 4 items. Okay, 0 to 3 contains 4 items. And then we map that. We map that into the game card that we just created. So here we write game, and underneath we import that game card. Game card. So here we go. We import it. And we also, as a traditional way, we have to give it a key name. That'll be the game's ID. And also we need to pass in the game object. Otherwise, where all the data come from. Okay, so now our game card get an ID, get the game object. This is the key thing that it need to do the job. So we have the property, and then we consume that property in a child component, and we can use it in it. Right? All right. So in the game card, this is going to be a very big thing. In today's session, I'm just going to finalize the front-end outlook for the game card, not the entire function, because we just pretty much want to present things over here on the home page. This is a quite large project. I'm not going to finish it in one session because you need time to follow up. If I put this thing in one video, it's probably going to take me 8 to 10 hours, which is not ideal for study. You need time to take a break. You need time for food and lunch. And what I'm thinking of is I will break that into quite a few sessions. And today's session, we're going to be finishing at finalizing this homepage. And the next few sessions, I'm going to finish each one of those different sections. Okay. Now, once we get into the game card, what we want to do, we're going to delete this. We're going to rebuild this card. div.column dash. On the extra large screen, we wanted to take a row of 3 column, take a column 3 column, and also on the large one, we wanted to take 4 column, and on the middle side of the screen, empty, we wanted to take 6 column, which is the half of the screen. So this is like the beauty of the Bootstrap. You can predefine how you want your item to be responsive. Right? Sometimes they can go a bit larger, sometimes they can shrink really small, just depending on how many columns you want them to take on different screen. And we already have the data from the game. So here, in the card, the first part, we want to show the image in the card. Right? So we're going to write an image box. The source, here we're just going to put in the game.image, because remember in our JSON, the API, we do have the image property for that game image. Alt, normally you can leave it blank if you do not want to put in anything, but I'm just going to put in the game title. Because we have that property, why don't we just use it? And we give it a Bootstrap class name image fluid. That'll make this image extendable, fully responsive. Once we've done that, let's see. This thing has been showing off right over here, which is the first 4 of the cards. And down here, we're going to create a like button. So this one will be the Bootstrap icon again. I'm just going to go there. And let's pick the heart one. I think the heart fill icon will be ideal for this card. So copy that, put it in, change the name to class name. Alright, and it's there. It's not styled yet, but it's there. And once we've done that, we're going to have to put in the game features. So just give a class name game feature. And inside, what we're going to do here, if you look at the JSON file, there's a rating property for that game. It has a rating of 3 or 4 or 5, 1 to 5, that's the scale. We don't want to show 1 to 5 on the browser, that's really tedious and less attractive. We want to show them in stars, right? So we're going to know what's the rating of it, and we show how many stars. If it's rating of 1, we show 1 star. Rating of 3, we show 3 stars. But those things are going to be dynamic. You don't want to hard code 3 stars in your code. How are we going to do that? So here we're going to do, first thing is that we put in the game type. And that thing is going to be curly braces, the game level. So we can access the game level over here. Some of the entry level, some of them are intermediary level. By the way, this data, some of them are genuine, like the image and the title and the trailer. Some of the things I just make it up, so it's not 100% genuine. So don't rely so much on this. So we're going to put in that level, game.level. And the second thing is going to show the rating. The rating contains different numbers of stars. So my idea is that we're going to wrap it into a separate component instead of using just one component, write everything over here. So in the component folder, we create one called game rating, JSX. And now we have that. So again, in the component folder, we'll create a CSS file called game rating with a capital G at the start. Once we've done that, we import the CSS. Over there. So we have it. These two are linked together. And here we're just going to put in our game rating component. So import out, look at the top, it has been correctly imported, same folder. And close that angle brackets. So what we're going to pass in here is the rating, right? That's essentially what we wanted to do. So rating equals to curly braces game.rating. Because remember, the JSON comes with a rating property, which is going to use that to turn it into the numbers of stars accordingly. And then we have all of this done. Now we are going to compile our rating component in here. And it's not a super hard one, I would say. You just want to figure out what do you need inside here. Firstly, you're going to need a game rating div to wrap things around. So we give the class name game rating. And inside, just going to be very easy, will be the number of stars. But how do we handle the different numbers of stars, right? Remember, we accept the rating as a property, and that rating is just a number. So we can take that property over here using object destructuring, and we're going to have to map that rating into stars, right? It's just a digital number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We map that into different numbers of ratings. But the mapping function, which is the JavaScript higher order array function, can only be used to arrays, not just a single number. So we have to turn that number into an array that contains those elements. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a state using the useState hook. And firstly, we need the state to hold our numbers of stars. So this will be stars, and then set stars. That equals to useState hook. Initially, it's going to be an empty array because we got no star in it. And then, next step, we're going to write a function to generate the stars when this thing gets mounted on the DOM. Okay? So we're going to say const generate stars equals to, it's going to be a stars, going to be an empty array initially, but once we loop through that rating, the array will be increased. Firstly, we're going to do a protection check if the rating is above 5, because we are not expecting the rating above 5, greater than 5, or I just mistyping that 5, or the rating is less than 1. So the minimum is 1. You cannot go below 1. At least you need to rate it. Okay, you can't give a 0. We're just gonna return, just jump out of this file because we're not gonna handle those negative and unreasonable figures. And if everything goes correct, we're gonna do a for loop. Inside it goes from the I equals to 0 to I less than rating. Rating is the number being passed in, and I plus plus. Inside a for loop, we're just gonna be push that number into our array, push I. So now we have this empty array contains all the ratings, and then we just return that array. Alright, so this looks all nice. So if you don't have 3 numbers, this is going to repeat 3 times. You end up with 3 numbers in your 1, 2, 3. Say for example, you end up with 1, 2, 3 in your array. If you have a 2, this will be 1, 2 in your array. This is extremely useful because each digit in your array is going to be different. So now, let's just say that once you have that, how are we going to call this generate star function? We have to call it somewhere for this array to be generated. We're going to use the useEffect hook because this thing needs to be created whenever the star or the card gets mounted on your DOM. So here we write useEffect. That's going to be an arrow function depending on nothing. And here we're just going to say generate this star. What we're going to get is the star array. And we want to set that star array into our local state with the star, right? So I'm just going to using this chain function, set stars to whatever you generated in this function, generate stars. Finalize it. Okay, that's all. That's all. Okay, you don't have to write one line of code and assign that eventual array into a variable and then set star to that variable. That's going to cost you 2 lines of code, which is not clean. And as soon as you have that, you can map it now. So in here, we just want to map our stars, which is our local states. Remember this local states, you use the set star function, has set it to the generate the star array. We want that to map star arrow function into the star objects. And I'm gonna using the icon to find a star. Yeah, that's a star field. It looks fine to me. Oh, wrong place. And we'll map into that. Change it to class name. And here we're gonna have to give a key. A key equals to star. And let me think if this key gonna be repetitive, reused. It will actually, because we have the game, probably two games have the same rating, they'll have the same key. So ideally you can use another way. I'm gonna show you. Because the built-in variable has an index, you can use the index as the key. That thing is unique. If we set that, that's gonna be okay. You don't have to use this star because we're not using the number in it. We just want to map the numbers of items inside an array into the numbers of stars. That's it. And once we've done that, the game rating is back. Going back, it's there. It's just invisible for now because it's pretty dark. I haven't done a CSS yet. I'm gonna do it right very quick, but you can see it has been successfully mapped. Okay. Now, going back to the game card, we have done a rating. And what's following after that is going to be the game title. So down the features, we create div.game title. And inside, we're just gonna say the game title. And we probably want to give a bit of a margin and padding to the top and bottom. MT stands for margin top. Give it a size of 4. This is the bootstrap thing. And the margin bottom, I give it a 3. So to make it a space out. And then, do we have the title? Yes, we have the title. We have everything there. Below it, we're gonna give the price. The game price. The game price is very interesting because in our JSON data, what we have is the discount and the original price. But what we want to show the user is the discount, the original price gets crossed out, and also the price after discount. Okay? However, there are some items that has no discount at all. The discount is 0. What if you encounter this situation? I mean, one store is unlikely to put discount on every single game item, right? Some of them are on discount, some of them are on the original price. So you have to deal with this conditional discounting. Going back to here, we're going to write a JavaScript code to deal with it. So first we're going to check game discount. If that thing is not equal to 0, if that's truthy, we're going to do one thing. Wrap it with a bracket. And inside the bracket, if it's a discount does not equal to 0, basically means this item is on special, on discount. We're going to show the discount items and the original price gets crossed out, all of those stuff. So here we're going to do a wrapping because we have 2 items to show. First one is a span called a discount. And inside it, we give an italic. We want to show the user the percentage of discount, but in the file, in the JSON, the discount comes in the decimal, the 1 decimal place, right? Which is incorrect. So we want to turn it into a percentage discount. We just say game.discount, and we have the time started by 100, and give the percentage sign. So that's the discount part, done. On the second one, we give the class name pre-price, which is the previous price, original one. And we want it to be the price over here. But this price is only giving you like the digital number. We want it to look more fancy. So we give a money sign before it, so it looks like a real dollar. And then we have to control the decimal places, game.price. We use the math function toFixed to control the decimal places to 2, because normally if it's a price, we can go to 2 decimal places as usual. And then once we've done that, we should have the price now. As you can see, that's all showing off. Okay, so we've done the discount price. And then after that conditional discount part, we're going to show the current price. The current price will be shown regardless of discount. So spend.current price. This is where we just apply some simple math. Think about the current price is the price after discount. So we're just going to use wrapped in the curly braces. So we're just going to use our math function to say this is the 1 minus games.discount. So this is the after discount, and we use that to time the game price, right? So if it's a 20% discount, this will be 1 minus 0.2 will be 80%. 80% times the previous price will give you the current price. So the current price is a calculated figure. It's not a figure that we fetch from the API, and we don't need to. Okay? What if the discount is 0? It doesn't really matter. If it's 0, 1 minus 0 equals to 1 times the original price is still the same price. So this formula works okay to all scenarios. We want to make sure this one fixed to 2 decimal places as well. Save that. And once you have that done, you can see this one has been calculated. 30% off that 52.56 is that. It's automatically calculated. So once we finish the game price, the last bit is going to be the add to back button. So we're just using a.addBack, give it a class name. And over here, we want to put in the icon. So going to the Bootstrap icon, we're just going to find a back one. So this one, it has a built-in add to back plus one, which is really cool. Let's see, that's the add to back. Do they have a field one? Am I actually looking for a field one? Because this looks nice. Yeah, this one looks nice. It's a field one with a plus sign. I will put it here. Change it to name. Yeah, that's it. And going back, you can see that's there. So we have pretty much generated all the items that we need based on the JSON data into our game card component. So the next step is to do the game card CSS. Let's put it back here. So for the entire game card, we want to give it that new morphism effect as well. So we do this box shadow. Once I've done that and going back, did I import it? Game card, import it. Yeah, the reason why it didn't show is because we forgot to wrap the things inside a class called game card. So I'm just going to build a div game card, and then you put everything inside that card component. So my habit is that we do not write your own class together with the Bootstrap thing. The Bootstrap just control the layout, the responsive framework, right? So you just leave it there to let it handle the responsive feature. So whatever you want to touch on, you write your own class in a separate path. So even though that's going to be a lot of wrapping, but this one will make your code clean. And also, you wouldn't mess each other. Because if you write in the same line, whenever you want to touch the game card, you touch the Bootstrap as well, which is going to be messy. And then you go back, and you will see that class comes out. Very beautiful new morphism coming over there, right? So once you have that, let's just keep going. To control the card image, we use this line. Give up a border radius, make sure the height and width are correct, so it looks very nice and neat. And also, the next part we want to control on is our like button. Here we create a hard field, so we better give it a class name for us to handle it. So inside the A, I'm just gonna say class like, so we can access this item. And then over here, we're just gonna put in the CSS for like. That's the like hover, the like active. And you can see it's very nice. What I did, I give a position absolute to the top right corner and make sure it has a certain width and height. And the background color has been set to the same color. So there's no difference between the padding area and also this one. It's sort of like these two are merged together, but they are two separate components. It's not like this like button is grow from the padding. It's two separate things, it's just they merge together. And then we make sure the body radius is correct and the aligning is correct. Okay. And then the next part, what we want to do is that we want to control all the spans that we used. We have been using too many spans in our file. So we'll give a general control of it to make sure the color looks white. And now it's all showing up. And then after that, we want to touch upon the game feature inside here. The game feature we're going to using a display flex because we want those stars to be lined up horizontally. And you can see this one is over here, even though it's still invisible, but I will make it show off. This one is over there. And the next part is the game title, the game type inside here. The game type, I made a background color and padding for it, so it can look nicer. Once it's in, it looks pretty nice. It matches with the rest of the color of the page. And the next thing we wanted to change is the title. For the title, we just want to make sure it has a standing out font. So I changed it to a different font, which is our game font, that one there. And we want to make sure we can turn it into a white one. So give the color to that. Yeah, it shows off straight away. Very beautiful. And underneath, we deal with the price. So this part, all of those discounts, the previous price, the current price are all price. So we set the game price in general to make sure it's a flexible display. And also we wanted the discount to stand out, give people a bit of attraction, so we make sure the background is in red. So once you've done that, you can see this one stand out. The previous price, what we want to do, we want to go through a line through. So text decoration line through basically means nothing will be crossed out. And we make sure the line through color is red. So look at that. It gets crossed out means that we're on discount now, this price is gone, this is a new price, like a typical digital marketing way. And I want to make sure that the current price in the right font size. The previous price is gone, so we can make it smaller, and the current one is bigger. And the last but not least is the add back button. We have to sort of give a design to make sure it matches the rest of the button and color. So what I did here is also a position absolute. Make sure it's sitting at the right bottom corner. Background to second. Also, I make the shape of a leaf. So this one doesn't look like a circle because it only have the border radius on two corners. The other two does not have the border radius, and it merges into the card edge. You can see the hover effect is also very beautiful. So in this way, we have our card design done, and it looks really, really cool and merges really well with the rest of the page. And except this one thing I want to adjust is the title. There's supposed to be a margin down the bottom. Let's see if I made a mistake in the home page. Here, in this row, we are supposed to put in something to make that adjustment. So what we're going to do, we're going to say margin bottom, give it a 4, margin top, give it a 4. And then we go back, you can see this one got a bit more space between them. Looks very, very nice, right? So far these buttons are not very clickable, but it looks all decent now. And we haven't done the part for the star. So going back to the card reading.css, let's fix the star color. Very simple, few lines. Paste it in. Make sure the font size is bigger, make sure the color is the same color, and also make sure it has a margin. And look at that, the star shows off. The star is dynamic. It's based on the API data. It's not just hard code in. This is how you turn a number into the actual physical icon. Okay? So far today, what we have done is to build this homepage of our website, the dashboard. And also we have learned this trigger on and off menu function, so to make the size shrink and expand accordingly. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how do we make the animated section. So if you click on these few buttons, the section should pop up or pop down, disappear, and show off. And if you click on this like button or this add to back button, this thing should be added into our libraries or our shopping bags. I will show you how to build those things as well. Those are more fancy things. And also in the category, I'm going to show you advanced filter and also how to do a search bar. Whenever you key in stuff in your search, it should do the search job for you. So today's video, we have done this beautiful carousel with all these Twitter videos on, entirely swipeable. Very, very cool, right? So digest this code. If you've got any questions, leave a message down the bottom of the description or the comments. And otherwise, we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.